live.
Well, welcome, ladies and gentlemen, and good morning, good afternoon, good evening to yet another edition of our weekly Vesto show. But hey, what can we say? Joao Reginatto, today's guest, already said in our pre-meeting, crypto never sleeps, So this is why we're pretty much covering all time zones of the world here. Pleasure to have you with us again tonight for I guess yet another great discussion. Joao Reginatto, I've mentioned him already. Tonight's guest. We're very happy to have him. For those of you who don't know him yet, I mean, this is certainly going to change within the next 30 minutes. Joao is a vice president for products and USDC product lead at Circle. So first of all, Joao, welcome to our show tonight, and thanks for being with us at Vesto.
Absolutely. Thanks for having me.
Oh, that's great. Circle, USDC. What are all those cryptic buzzwords? Maybe Circle, more of you know Circle, one of those companies that really helps us, get the cryptocurrency ecosystem running. Talking about making payments, getting payouts, creating marketplaces. This is what Circle is all about. But I'm sure, Joao is going to tell us a little more about Circle and especially about what is USDC after we talked about DAI last week in our Vesto show. So Joao, we're looking forward to having you shed a little light into those crypto buzzwords and give our audience a little bit of an idea of what's behind that crypto banking environment and how close we actually are already to getting crypto banking, this classic look, touch, and feel of banking, the way how we've been knowing it for all of our lives. And obviously, I'm not alone again tonight, so I'm extremely happy. Wolfgang Decker, my good friend and our chief strategy officer, with me. Our frequent guests know, we're already we're as always socially distanced around town, me in the north of Munich, Wolfgang in the very south of Munich. But hey, that's the way it goes these days. So Wolfgang, thanks for being with us tonight as well. And Joao, I'm sure people didn't come tonight, even though I would wish for it. People didn't come to listen to me, but to listen to you and to hear a little more about you and especially your crypto legacy. You're one of the big dogs. You're one of the experienced guys in the industry. Joao, Circle USDC. Maybe you can start giving us a little bit of an intro, a little bit of an overview of what we're talking about tonight.
Sure, and I'm sure people come to this for you and for the fun as well.
Oh, thank you. Wow, needed that.
Yeah, so as you said, Circle has been around for a while. Circle was founded in 2013, and even though the company has been through a few different strategic focuses, and I'll obviously talk more about what we're doing right now. The mission has always been the same, and we talk about that internally. How Circle was one of those companies founded because of the advent of Bitcoin and cryptocurrencies, right? It was one of those times that I think a lot of companies are founded on that basis. There's just some key innovation there. There's just some new technology, and folks want to try and use that and bring some sort of value to customers. But it might be that in the beginning, you're not entirely sure what exactly is going to be the way you're going to win, or you're going to be building something that finds a fit with what your customers need. And then you just go through this trajectory of trying a number of different things. I think we were very stubborn about our mission from the beginning, but kind of flexible in terms of how to achieve that. And I'll talk briefly about some of the phases that we have gone through as a company. But fundamentally,
that'd be really helpful, so people understand who are the players behind that
right.
that ecosystem. To understand that this is not this wild bunch anymore, or this bunch of crooks, but those are some serious people who are building up serious companies.
Yeah, absolutely. And Jeremy Allaire, our founder, he's a serial entrepreneur. He has been involved in a lot of foundational things in terms of building the internet. I mean, he was involved with developing application servers for for very early developers back in the early internet days, and how do you go about building like a sophisticated website or e-commerce, and then he had a foray, and he was very successful with Alaire, the company at the time, who eventually merged into all the way into Macromedia and Adobe. Then he had a foray into like video on the internet, right around the time where also YouTube was making its stride, and I think Jeremy like founded a very successful company in Bright Cove and brought video on the internet for businesses, and brought that company public. So Jeremy understands how the internet has been this foundational driver for change, especially in things like communications and media and commerce. And then I think when he realized what was possible with the invention of Bitcoin, right, and really for the first time the ability to represent like scarce value natively on the internet.
Right.
I think a lot of people, and I have done that myself for the last 20 years. I have been deeply involved with building infrastructure that touches the internet in one way or another, and I think a lot of us share that feeling that this is what we were missing for a long time, and it's what also it's in a way it's what left us with the big behemoths of like Facebook and Google and things like that sort of create these monopolies, because the only way to monetize some of these services is through the selling of data and engagement, because you don't have like a very easy way for users and content creators and website creators, for example, to directly have a financial relationship. And hopefully cryptocurrencies is what's going to change that. So that's very exciting for us. But going back to Circle, the mission has always been that then, given the existence of these crypto assets and blockchain technology, and really the possibility of creating this internet of value, let's bring these benefits over to consumers and businesses around the world. That has always been the mission. The how we went about delivering on that mission, that has changed over years. So in the beginning, and as I said, Circle was founded in 2013. In the beginning, we had a retail focus, a consumer focus. So we built apps and services mainly for consumers to be able to benefit from the faster and cheaper payments element that can be delivered through blockchain rails. Then we went into
really the efficiency argument of cutting out middlemen, having sort of your 15-second transfers or something like that all around the world.
Exactly. That idea that, I can send an email to anybody anywhere in the world, and I don't need to ask permission for anybody to do that, even if yes, you use big services for that, but even if I wanted to do that and without asking for permission from anyone, I can directly connect to SMTP, and similarly for the receiver, and that reaches anywhere in the world instantly and for nearly free. And why is it that when it comes to money and transferring value, that's far from being the case, as we know, and we can talk more about that. So that was the first foray into it. We attempted to use Bitcoin, with nice user experiences for retail to allow people to do that. Then we did. Then we went into the investment space as well, with crypto beginning to grow in terms of its own asset class. How could customers, tap into those new asset classes and invest a little bit of money on Bitcoin or invest a little bit of money on ETH? Then we operated a crypto exchange. So we did all those things. In sort of in parallel to all this, right? And this is the part that I was always connected to at Circle was really the platform side. So I'm an engineer by training, so I've always been connected to the build out of those infrastructures, and it's really hard. So some of these things that we have built are probably amongst the hardest things that I've seen being built. But not for the engineering complexity, but just for the complexity that's involved in financial services, especially if you want to do something global, right? So connecting to tradition,
regulation, and
regulation, the siloed approach, right? The segregated and fragmented way that you deal with money in different jurisdictions, the fact that banks are not global as an entity, right? Except for a very few cases. So every new jurisdiction, you have to connect to these rails through one of these regulated sort of gatekeepers, which are the banks. And also for payments processing, you need to deal with different companies, and there are different rules. And in this country, you can allow a payment of this size. In this other country, you can't allow that, or it has to be different. And so I was responsible for example, bringing Circle's infrastructure over to the European region. At the time, I was based in Dublin and did a lot of that. And that just seemed tremendously inefficient, and definitely not the way that we would continue to expand as a company if we wanted to have global ambitions, which we always have. So at some point we started playing, and I think it was particularly when Ethereum surfaced in sort of 2015, 2016. We started monitoring what could be done with Ethereum, and all of a sudden, beyond the idea of Bitcoin and a digital asset that can go anywhere, Ethereum allowed people to imagine, like implementing your own flavor for these assets and your own behaviors, and automating all of that behavior in a running on decentralized infrastructure. And so we started playing, right around the ICO craze, started playing with the idea of what a token for our infrastructure would look like. How could we do better payments, better use cases if we had tokens that we could manipulate in terms of behavior. But then it just dawned to us that what we really wanted, what we really needed all along for some of the things that we had done in the past was the ability to use fiat currency on blockchain rails. It just occurred to us, we don't need, and I think a lot of people actually did this and didn't have the realization that maybe we had, that you don't need to add another translation, right? So we don't need to create a Circle token, and that token is going to be the intermediary. We really need a dollar, a digital dollar, a dollar that runs on blockchain, or a euro that runs on blockchain, and so on and so forth. And so we set out to design USDC, and I was working on leading that front at Circle at the time. And the initial thing that I did was, let's go to the ecosystem, to the market, and talk to a lot of companies and find out what they think about this, and how do they feel about us getting into this space. And the response was very, very positive. At the time, obviously, Tether was beginning to be very, very popular, and especially in Asia, it was being used a lot to fill this gap in terms of the lack of fiat on and off ramps that could move like more significant volume into crypto markets. So we just got feedback that yes, absolutely, you guys should build that, and if you build it, we're going to use it. And we just got a lot of validation and a lot of confidence that if we built that, it would work out. But still, we didn't want to do something that was just yet another stablecoin. So we wanted to build something that was going to be really this foundational piece of infrastructure that we would hope other businesses would see also as such, and would start to build financial services on top of it. Because to me, and having been in technology and things like internet applications for 20 years, and having acted as an IT architect for many years, you were in financial services inclusive. You're always dealt with this sort of decision making, right? I need to build a new infrastructure. I need to build a new, banking infrastructure or e-commerce infrastructure, and these things have to be built to sustain scale and to live through, years and years and years to maximize return on investment. And so you have to be really careful with the components that you choose, right? And we saw a stable coin, or a fiat currency running on blockchains. We saw that as one of these components that technologists around the world would eventually choose to add to their infrastructure. And they would have to rely on that. They would have to trust on that, right? Because they would literally build their business on top of that. So if that goes away all of a sudden, you didn't make a good technology choice. And if you had to swap that for something else, that's always painful. The same thinking that people go through when they choose a database, or when they choose an application layer or whatever.
And I mean, even more so in terms of money, as we always said,
especially in terms of
the
money.
basis of money, of banking, it's always trust.
Exactly.
I mean, in the old days, you were able to look into the eyes of your banker, whether and you know whether he was good guy or crook or something like that. And now, I mean, literally in the crypto sphere, we don't know our bankers anymore. So we need the infrastructure, we need the tech to be as
Exactly.
trustworthy and without any screw ups. Huh?
Absolutely, and we saw USDC as potentially that piece of infrastructure. USDC is interesting because, as any stable coin, it is both a bearer, it can be both a bearer instrument, right? So it is the currency that people use for a lot of these transactions, but it can also be this piece of infrastructure. So instead of when I if I am an entrepreneur and I'm going to build a financial service, and it has to have an element of holding balance for my customers, or supporting transfers on behalf of my customers, I need to think, right, I'm going to connect to a payments processing service, I'm going to connect to a banking infrastructure to be able to hold those funds and move those funds. What we wanted to introduce was the ability for people to also see that a crypto wallet was just as good as a piece of infrastructure as a bank account, and blockchain and maybe APIs were just as good as using a payments processing service to move funds in and out of infrastructure. So, and that was a pain point that we have had, and a lot of us building infrastructure for other companies have had, which comes from this experience in having done this in multiple jurisdictions and knowing that unless you want to have a roadmap for 20 years, you're not going to be able to build a global service like that. So that was the seed of all that, and then it just turned out. So we were building USDC, and USDC started to grow and be successful. But as I said, that was happening in parallel to all of the other business lines that Circle had at the time that were more retail and consumer in nature. And then at some point in 2019, we just decided, because of what was happening in the industry, we decided that shifting our focus to infrastructure, around payments and treasury for businesses, and really going all in on this idea that crypto banking and crypto asset banking has a real chance of being the next generation platform for how all of these services are built. We decided to shift the company in that direction, and that's what we have been doing since last year. Then, so so what we have today is a number of things, right? So USDC is a stable coin. It's obviously dollar backed. It's not decentralized in the way that people qualify. So it's obviously not the DAI model. It's a fiat collateralized stable coin, and because it's collateralized by dollars, you need to hold those dollars somewhere as an entity, and that make it more traditionally centralized. But we didn't think it was good enough for a currency like that, for a solution like that, to be led and driven by a single company. So from the inception, what we did was to conceive this idea of the Center Consortium. So USDC actually doesn't belong to Circle. USDC is a standard that belongs to the Center Consortium, which was founded at the time then in 2018 by both Circle and Coinbase, which shared a lot of the vision, and we're glad that Coinbase joined us in that journey at that time. And then Circle and Coinbase are companies that use that standard and can basically create and destroy that currency, and they do so by following the policies that are governed by the consortium. And obviously that includes making sure that any circulating supply is fully collateralized, all the investment policy that is allowed or not allowed, and all the very, very extensive checks and balances that are involved in building a solution like that. But so what we do at Circle is build infrastructure that runs on top of these stablecoin standards that are run by the Center Consortium. What we do then is we provide payment services and treasury services for businesses. So all the way from something that we call a Circle account, which is really what we hope to be the next generation commercial bank account for businesses who are interested in this new type of technology. Combined with it's an API first product, so combined with all these APIs that you can use to kind of superpower that account and really process payments, that span across traditional payment methods like credit cards and bank account transfers and things like that, but also covering blockchain payments. So if you want to process sheer USDC payments, all of that doing and settled in the Circle account, but also allowing customers to custody balances in this new form. So what I like to say is that Circle used to have this product called Circle Pay, as I mentioned in the beginning, was a peer-to-peer payments product, something really similar to Venmo in the US, or to some of the services that in a more fragmented way exist in Europe. But imagine if you could build that product on top of crypto technology. You would very likely have Circle as a key technology partner to enable you to do that, because you could represent these dollar balances for your customers using our infrastructure, even if the consumers don't know that is stored in the form of a crypto asset, and we don't think consumers eventually should care about it. But also the processing of transactions and transfers across all these wallets. Those are all services that we offer through these APIs as part of our infrastructure.
And Joao, well, thanks a lot. It was an amazing overview of how Circle really developed and how it went through the different stages and what's the role of USDC. And I think that this all really evolves around crypto banking as not being something which is somewhere out there in left field and we don't know what it is. But, the way you described it, I mean, you use the exact same keywords, which anybody would be linking to his or her bank. You were talking about transactions, you were thinking about, corporate use cases, you were talking about consumers, you were talking about trust as the backbone of it all. And yeah, man, that's also one of the lessons that we want to take our audiences, or that we want our audience to take home with them, leaving those Vesto shows, that, hey, this is not something which bunch of numbnuts is doing out there, but this is serious banking, and you can trust, this, as well as you can trust the bank that you've been dealing with for decades. And I think, your story was really great for that. Let me flip the page a little bit to Wolfgang. Obviously we've learned right now what Circle stands for, what USDC is, and I found that very interesting also, Joao, that you highlighted the difference between USDC and DAI, for example, we were discussing last week. Wolfgang, looking at Circle, looking at USDC, now Joao has has hinted on some use cases already. What's the role of Circle in a Vesto ecosystem? Why is that important for us to have Joao here, not only tonight, but to be working with him and his colleagues, in the future as well?
I was taking loads of notes
until he ran out of paper, but that's it.
Not fully, but not sure where it takes me. Let me start to and try to answer this. The first trigger that I got was when Joao mentioned, why is transferring money not as easy as sending an email? So I'm connected to an SMTP gateway, send it wherever the planet it takes. Right. Normally, it's there. And this took me to the idea of maybe desirable, but somewhat unlikely, not single European payment market, but potentially a single global payment area. This will not work, very likely, because geopolitical restrictions, but at the end of the day, if payment would be as easy as sending emails to anybody on the planet, why not looking into a single European payment market? However, we have fragmented infrastructure. Yes, there are dominant players out in the market, and Circle and USDC are definitely one of the key initiatives and projects out there, but there are many others. This would, next to the geopolitical world or situation, make a single global payment area more unlikely. Next thing I found, we need solutions for a fragmented standards. So these differentiating payment solutions will continue to emerge, but players will be needed, such as Vesto, to put a shim layer on top of it to shield the complexity from the institutions and above all also from the end users. You mentioned also end users sometimes in some user expectations. I think the use cases will shift from purely remittance to other segments, from trade to commerce, so to say, from payment to trade to commerce. What else did I catch? In the banking world, the user experience has been defined by the banks.
True. So, yeah.
This is over. The future world of banking will be driven or will be customer focused. So customers will define the nature and the combination of the type of services they want. Last but not least, there is regulation needed, which leads me back to the beginning, to the email. When Joao said email, the fact that the internet was so blooming so successfully was that we established early something called the World Wide Web Consortium that governed the standards and the complexities. And yes, there have been a few attempts left and right, but at the end of the day, there was a control instance that made sure that it was ubiquitously accessible to each and everybody, no matter where you are, what type of infrastructure, hardware, software you used. Now Vesto, what is Vesto playing? Well, that's the very nature of Vesto, to integrate standards that are not truly built on top of each other, but can be integrated. So we have an end-to-end stack, a holistic stack that shields the complexity from the institutions, from the end customers. Those of you in the audience who have seen the Vesto core idea about the layered architecture stack know that we build on top of a transaction engine, not non-technically speaking, a container where our customers, the banks and the fintechs that want to use the platform, innovate. And this innovation is, of course, customer focused. Of course, it will be an integrated experience, even so underneath there is, I don't know, Aave or whatever protocol underneath. The customer shouldn't care. We need, or the owner of that container that provides the user story, need to shield this complexity. And this is the role of Vesto. And yes, I would love to add, and we will make sure that we help to shape the regulation towards a RegTech. So fintech requires RegTech, but this would be maybe asking too much for the time being. But I think the industry of innovators will need to contribute heavily to the regulation, else we would always be slowed down and stopped. And why not co-create the new regulation? And I think we at Vesto, we are ready to have our humble contribution to this development.
It seems like this is exactly what's happening these days, starting last summer when we had the Brian Brooks OCC open letter, talking about, financial institutions holding crypto assets, and also kind of like the signals that we're getting from the new US administration right now. It seems like, they've realized that the crypto train is no train to be stopped, so to say. The crypto train is, Joao, and I loved your approach about that, thinking global, it's just something, it's just a global train that is moving, and of course, in the US, you might decide right now to put a halt to it because of some regulatory or political concerns, but it's not going to help. It's just going to cut you off, from a trend that has so many dramatic advantages, that it cannot be held up. So yeah, Joao, when Wolfgang was talking, I saw you nod a couple of times. Agree with what Wolfgang was saying and what Wolfgang's vision was about, how to be joint players in a crypto banking ecosystem between players like Circle and Vesto?
Yeah, I was nodding and thinking back to a couple of things that really excited me into getting into this space, and I think it's why I believe that this is just a much more sophisticated infrastructure, and it's quite likely to be inevitable. Whether it is driven by Circle, Vesto, or the next generation of companies, but I really think it's inevitable at this point. And it comes to one thing that I think it's at the core of this new technology infrastructure that we have access to now for the last 10 years, which is the permissionless aspect of it. That's a bit that I think interests me a lot. A lot of people, sometimes criticizes USDC or sometimes even offerings that Circle or other similar companies can have in the space as something like, oh yes, but this is just more of what we had already, and you're talking about crypto bank, and people don't like the B word, right, the bank word, because they see that as introducing all of these silos again, and a lot of not a lot of opportunity for the smaller participants in this space. But I think instead the way that we look into that is, businesses and individuals, they always make a choice about what sort of service they're going to use for their financial services needs, right? And that has to do with a lot of things. It has to do with the cost. It has to do with the user experience, right? How easy it is to access and things like that. And we always see Circle as that, as a window, and we pride ourselves of that. We want to bring solutions to customers that are very easy to use, that abstract a lot of the complexity away. We talk a lot internally about the magic that comes when you make certain technology complexities disappear, right? What Apple is very good at, for example, just released a phone that all of a sudden didn't have the complexity of the keyboard, and the keyboard was just abstracted away by the screen, and you have all of these things.
Let's face it, they created the phone, which in fact was nothing but a mobile internet access device, okay.
Exactly,
and
yeah.
we slapped the phone functionality on top of that, because we had some space in there, eh?
And I think for technologists that's the way of thinking that comes quite naturally, right? It comes from like looking at the seven layers of like the internet stack or network stacks and all those things. And layer after layer, you're abstracting things away and eventually making it easier and easier for people to consume a service, right? So at the top of a layer, you have one service, one function, and as you go deeper down the stack, you actually have that as like an orchestration of multiple transactions or transfers happening, and it's totally okay for that layering to happen. So we see Circle as operating in various levels of that stack, right? We have USDC, which is a bit of a protocol for fiat currency on the internet, and then we build layers on top of that. But what I am passionate about in blockchain and crypto is that is also permissionless, and so we are connected to this infrastructure that resembles a lot more communication and media on the internet, that I can use these services, but if I'm not satisfied, I am not locked to those services, and
There's
I can
no
move on.
Effect. Yeah, exactly.
And if I feel I'm locked at that level of the stack, I can always move one level down and then keep going. So we'll give examples, right? Analogies are kind of poor, but I like to use those. A newspaper online is not for everyone, right? I might have an opinion. I'm not going to be able to share that opinion on a newspaper because that newspaper is owned by a certain entity and they're going to have a certain direction. And if I write a letter to them or if I write a column to them, they're not going to publish if it's not aligned with whatever the mission that they have. But I can build my own website, right, and connect it directly to HTTP and host it out of my laptop at home, and I can have a blog post, and then I can write whatever I want. And so the beauty of, I think, what the internet introduces choice for people, and in all of those cases where people for one reason or the other have to get away from mainstream services, that they have the option to do so. I think that's the interesting thing with this new infrastructure is that you want to get into DeFi, you want to invest your money in different asset classes, or you want to transfer, manage your treasury as a company, or you want to transfer funds around the globe. You can do that with a company like Circle. You can do other things with Vesto, and that will give you a particular quality of service that will give you access to certain things. And if you're not happy, you can have your own, browser wallet, and you can own your own private keys, and you can still access the same infrastructure, the same level of services in your own self-administered way, right? And if those things are all interoperable, and if all of these applications talk the same language, and the same language of money, I think over time will be assets like USDC and similar things. Then it's really bringing the advent of the internet into financial services. So that's one of the things that I'm passionate about. It's like Circle and Vesto become just two services that, without us actually talking too much, they are natively interoperable, right? And you can go
absolutely. No, gentlemen, this was great, and I know I always feel the evil. I already feel the evil looks of Travis, who is not only our Chief Business Development Officer, but also, the timekeeper in my neck already. Nevertheless, I don't want to let the two of you leave without a final look into the crystal ball. I mean, what you guys have been talking about right now was fascinating. I think was fascinating for me, was fascinating for our audience. We learned so much. Joao, the layered approach that you were talking about. I mean, I believe the layered approach, this is also what we were touching, tonight in our discussion. We started with user friendliness and, touch and feel of classic banking and crypto environments, and went down layer by layer, and talked about the lifelines of that, talked about USDC as one of the protocols of that. Now, obviously, what we do need in order to get crypto banking widely accepted is technology, which is flawless and sort of justifies trust on the customer end. I think we can check that off. I think we have that. What we do need is regulation that is crypto friendly. Well, there's quite some question marks still out there, but we do get the sense, all of us, that regulation is trying to, or is starting to adapt, starting to accept crypto as a unavoidable market force, so to say, and starting to create a set of regulation which is crypto friendly as is. What we need on top of that right now, obviously, is the use cases, the everyday use cases for everybody out there, in private use and in corporate use. Now, in the Vesto shows, we've often been talking about remittance business, and obviously because of the efficiency considerations of crypto banking, it's just the ideal tool for remittances, because you don't have a MoneyGram or a Western Union. Yes, there are others as well, not just taking putting their hand to the cookie jar, but like Wolfgang always keeps saying, really putting their hand into the rice bag, which is feeding some of the people. So we know that for remittance, crypto banking is just great. If I ask the two of you, Joao, Wolfgang, and whoever wants to go first, where would you see the next big thing, so to say, in terms of use cases for crypto banking to go? What is it? What will be the next big use cases that will sort of come around the corner? Yeah, Joao, feel free to jump in, because I saw you move towards the mouse already.
No, I was trying to give Wolfgang his time. I think what a few things. Yeah, remittances. I think it's a very interesting use cases, and as you said, especially with now the advent of what people call third generation blockchains, right?
Right.
Where there's an evolution there in terms of the cost and the scalability. I think you're beginning to see some, and the speed, and you're beginning to see some very interesting. For example, USDC, we have implemented USDC now on 4 blockchains, and obviously the vast majority of USDC use is still on Ethereum, but it is now present on Algorand and on Solana and on Stellar, and in particular those last 3, they're very scalable, very cheap, very efficient blockchain implementation. So with that new wave and technology getting better and better, not only so remittances, as you said, is like a classic use case that I would love to see more and more companies tapping into. There's still a little bit of work to be done at the UX level, at the user experience, and how useful you can make those assets for especially for people receiving that. On our side, we then tend to focus also on treasury management use cases. Businesses who now want to experiment, sometimes with a little bit of money to begin with, but want to experiment with the new profile of yield or interest that can be generated by crypto asset classes, but also the ability to make payments across businesses, in benefiting from similar things that remittances benefit. So much more cheaper and fast and global payments between businesses that can be made with this infrastructure. And also what we're seeing, which again is a little bit similar to remittances in a way, but it's payouts to individuals when a business needs, especially if they need to do across borders in multiple jurisdictions. It could be like a big marketplace that pays sellers around the world and wants to pay very frequently and for small amounts and doesn't want to incur the cost. We see those use cases growing a lot in the last year.
Yeah, Wolfgang, you agree?
I copy all of the above, and I think in the consumer space, it's initially from migration-based remittances, but also to general cross-border payments, e-commerce, online marketplaces, bill payments. So the typical field where you predominantly right now find MasterCard, PayPal, Amazon, Western Union things. The area which I think will grow even faster is marketplace payments or marketplace disbursements, SME trading for companies that do not have global office infrastructure, that do not net international financial, but they just need to do simple trades, one-off kind. And right now, that's again PayPal, TransferWise, maybe. Salaries, I think.
Sure. Payroll. Yeah.
Pensions. So all the payout, the recurring payout, salaries, pensions, legal fees, social benefits for citizens. At the end, I think, and this will be
think about the Corona aids at this point of time. Had we been able to pay those out in crypto, I mean, God, would have been so much faster, so much more efficient. Wonderful, yeah.
And I think at the end it will again eat its way up through the value chain from the simple use case to the more complex use cases in the businesses, on the corporates who have things that will never happen or maybe not happen in the next decade, corporate investment banking things.
Like the former Nasdaq CEO said, all of Wall Street's assets could be tokenized 5 years from now.
That will for sure. Technically, it's possible, definitely.
Yeah.
The question is, I mean, in Germany we have the Stuttgart Stock Exchange has a digital spin-off called Bison. They are doing pretty great things just for one of these platforms to really attack, let's say, Xetra or Nasdaq. This takes a while, and I believe there is enough time for them to defend their position. But I don't know. I mean, that would be crystal ball, as you asked.
Exactly.
I think the next big thing is from low value remittance to high value international payments in the consumer space, and towards SME trading in the corporates, in the SME marketplaces.
Wonderful, Wolfgang, and the fact that I saw Joao nodding while you were talking, kind of gives me a good feeling that he agrees pretty much to what you were saying. So, gentlemen, time flies as always when you're having fun. Thanks so much for a fabulous discussion tonight, taking us on a force ride through the world of crypto banking, from the lifelines to the use cases. I personally learned a lot. I'm sure our audience learned a lot. Joao Reginatto from Circle, and obviously Vesto's very own Wolfgang Decker. Thanks so much, gentlemen, for being with me on the show tonight. To our audience, wish all of you a good evening, a good night, a good remainder of the day. Once again, thank you for your attention. Hope to see you again, next week, Thursday, in our next edition of the Vesto Show. And don't break traditions. As always, I'd love to turn over to Travis McGregor, Chief Business Development Officer, for for his final blessing. Travis, stage is all yours.
This is one of the best episodes. I mean, I learned so much, and the history, 2013. Wow.
Yeah.
Early.
Amazing, huh?
I was trying to look at this in 2017. I thought I was getting old in this. So, Joao, thank you so much for being here. You're highly regarded in the industry, and thank you so much for your time. Obviously, Wolfgang and Carsten, wonderful show for the audience. Again, this will be recorded. It'll be available on our website. And to all, take care, and thanks for being here.
Thank you, everybody. See you soon. Bye-bye.
Thank you.
Thanks for having me.
Thanks, gentlemen.